to the West Jersey Tea Party regular meeting. Tonight we have a speaker, John Horvat, who will have us rolling in the aisles with his economic theories. So that was a joke, folks. Holy mackerel, tough crowd. But before that, we have some housekeeping issues we'd like to take care of. As you all know, we have our annual Christmas dinner next month. If you have not gone onto the website and signed up, please do so. We need a head count, so it will be held here at Braddock's Tavern. It's our way of thanking Braddock's for providing this room for free of charge, which means that we have a bartender in the back. Drink heavily, please. I run a taxi service, and it's inexpensive. Better than going to see the local gendarme. Anyway, the 19th or 13th of December is our Christmas party. I would, what is it? 19th. That was the 13th for all those who weren't paying attention. By the way, my name is Bill Haney. I'm on the board of directors with these people, with the Tea Party here in Medford, and I can say without question that it is my greatest pleasure to work with patriots every single day, and everybody here is a great example of patriotic behavior, except Cliff. Cliff will be up to explain why he is not a good example. However,
I second that motion.
Okay, glad to hear that. You've seen him in action. The other thing that we have to talk about is recently there is a fellow who writes a blog called T-Path, and he asked us if we would be interested in signing on to a legislative action for the state of New Jersey to protect the Second Amendment. And I would like to provide that invitation to everybody. I will be publishing that to our mailing list so that everybody has a chance to weigh in. And it's a really good thing because what it does is it obviates a lot of the laws that have been passed in this last debacle of a governor's race and the idiocies committed by the Senate and the Assembly in the state of New Jersey. And it is an opportunity for us to provide the Senate and the Assembly a chance to realize that they are mistaken in their attacks upon the Second Amendment. So I will be putting that out in a week or so to get everybody to weigh in and say, yes, I'm willing to stand up and participate and provide an opportunity. There's also on the 2nd of December, which is Monday a week, there is a rally taking place in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the Tea Party Patriots. Tea Party Patriots is a national organization, and they asked us if we would be willing to travel down to Washington, D.C. for 4 or 5 hours out of the day to rally against the illegal amnesty that was proposed by our president.
Your president,
Not your president. I realize that. I'm not the president of anybody in this room. But King George III comes to mind when he takes the law into his own hands, the way he has done over the last 6 years. The most egregious was just last night when he announced the certification of 5.5 million new American citizens. Along the same lines, there is an organization called True the Vote. Has anybody heard of True the Vote? Okay, True the Vote is asking us to step up to the plate to do research in light of this illegal authorization of aliens, because there is no way that the databases, as they are given Social Security cards and other government identification, there is no way that a database can separate them out and say, these are citizens, these are non-citizens. So we have to engage with True the Vote and to do the research at the county level and the state level to help identify who is a citizen today and who is a claimant of citizenship tomorrow. And I would like everybody here, I will send that out as well over the next couple of days to get everybody engaged in that process. Greg Adams, you had something to say?
Thanks, Bill. This will be real fast. I promised Bill I wouldn't go over 60 seconds.
You're on the clock.
Yeah, and Bill says I'm going to be preacher to the choir, and I hope he's right. I just wanted to say a few words about why we should be upset about the illegal immigration and legalizing illegals who are already here. Now, the reason we should be upset about legalizing people who are already here is that it just invites more people to come over the border. Ronald Reagan did this, and that was supposed to be, okay, we'll legalize the people here and we won't let any more in. Well, we see how that worked out, right? And this is no different. And this president has no intention of keeping illegals from crossing the border. There's a man named Leon Rodriguez. He was on the board of directors of Cassidy, Maryland, which is an organization that helps illegal aliens get jobs and homes and settle in. And his imperial presidency appointed this guy to be the director of the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service. So we really have the fox watching the hen house. Everything is going awry. And the big deal about illegal immigration is this. The reason these people went out of Mexico, there are two kinds of people in Mexico. The people who have friends and contacts, and they can get good jobs because they have friends and contacts. There are people who don't have contacts, and because of the many systems of privilege and exclusion that exist in Mexico, including street gangs, including the cartels, including government corruption. For example, if you want to be a school teacher in Mexico, there are two ways you can get that job. You can have a parent who's a school teacher, that's one way in, or you can pay a lot of money and buy someone's job from them. And everything's like that, everything's corrupt. It's a culture of corruption and privilege and exclusion, and they're bringing that here with them. And in out west, in Los Angeles in particular, and other places out west, black people are getting thrown out of their neighborhoods by Latins who are coming in and ethnically cleansing that neighborhood. No blacks are allowed. If a black person moves in, they get beaten, they get firebombed, they're thrown out. They're not there a day. They have very much an invaders mentality. Not every one of them, certainly degrees and exceptions, but they're a real problem, and we need to turn back the tide. My time's up. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. On to more pleasant things. We talked about the Second Amendment solution that is being proposed by a fellow named T-Path, and I think that stands for Tea Party something tracking hub. And I'm not sure exactly what it stands for, what the A is. But he's a good friend of mine, and he and a couple of other groups have been working together trying to come up with a legislative response to the boneheaded rules that the government has passed on to us. Anyway, we have NJ2AS, New Jersey Second Amendment Society representative, Cliff, with us this evening. He's here every week. Cliff, you want to bring us up to speed?
Well, let's see, in light of everything that's going on recently, I don't have a whole lot to say. It will all pale by comparison to what we're living through these days. But I do have a couple things. One is our founder, Frank Fiamingo. He's not feeling all that well, so he's been kind of quiet lately. He had a separation of a muscle on his arm, and he had a tooth extraction and one thing and another, but he'll be back up to speed shortly. And let's see, so I do want to do a mini book report. Just one thing I wanted to point out is there's a book called The Blue Tent Sky by Brian Aitken, who was jammed up right here in little old Burlington County on firearms not too many years ago. And his book, The Blue Tent Sky, which I just read last week, phenomenal read. It's inexpensive, it's got a lot of space. I got it one day, it came by Amazon, showed up on my porch late in the day. Before noon the next day, it was ready. Okay? And, well, I did get up in the middle of the night and read a bunch of it. But it just shows the travesty that passes for gun laws in the state of New Jersey. It is just phenomenal. And the fact that the judge who was in charge of his case and the prosecutor would not allow anything to be presented to the jury that was in his favor or that would show good light on his case. It's just a major travesty. You all need to read it. It's probably not in the library yet, but it's worth a buy. If you really want it, I didn't bring my copy tonight, but let me know and I'll get it in your hands if you want to see it. So that said, and I should point out that Robert's got First Amendment TV, and he taped, when was that done, Robert?
Tuesday at the New Jersey Tea Party Coalition up in Teaneck. He gave a lecture. They were also filming for their cable channel up there. His book is available on Amazon, and I'll be posting a video of that shoot later tonight. So
and he was there,
Bill will
right?
be able to send it out to you, the link to see the video of him explaining what's going on. But they're still targeting his family in Mount Laurel. And it was quite an interesting lecture he gave, and from what I heard, his book is fantastic.
I didn't steal your thunder, I hope.
No.
Okay, good. So the other thing that, so please get the book, at the very least watch Robert's video of the whole thing, and I'm sure you'll be stunned. I also friended Brian Aiken on Facebook, and he got back to me. We've had a couple of exchanges back and forth. So, good guy. One of the things that we do at the Second Amendment Society is we have a program called Operation Establish Compliance, wherein many townships add extra hurdles to the process of getting a firearms identification card and or a permit to purchase a pistol, sometimes called a P2P. So one of the things that we've done, we kind of set it aside for a while, the Operation Establish Compliance. Some extra forms were being required by some townships around New Jersey against the law. Not supposed to do that. So we had probably, I want to say a dozen, it might be plus or minus a few. We've had different townships taken to task, and they've had to remove these extra forms. So that's a good thing. But such things never go away completely. And we've reinvigorated our established compliance program. And this is on our landing page for the NJ2AS. And there's a list of things that you have to go through, and it's kind of a primer on how to get your cards and all that jazz. There's samples of the forms that the state wants you to fill out. And there's, if you have a problem with a particular municipality or the chief of police there, we have a form letter that you can just print out, sign. We're talking about getting a card that you can mail to us so that we're aware of what's been going on. Because these different townships, the police simply don't know, number one. Number two, they're in, not all of them, but a good many of them are looking to snuff out the Second Amendment. They just are. The state has their form that you have to fill out. That's from the state police. This, and the last form, and I'm almost done here. This is an interesting, this is a mental health records form. It's a consent for mental health records search. so that when you sign this, they're allowed to go poking around in all your background. Interesting to note, this one is the revision of 10 of 14. That's October of 2014. This one has a new thing on it, and it's part 2 to be completed by the County Adjuster's Office, Mental Health Institution and/or doctor. So they had they have to fill out and sign and all this jazz. And it used to be, on the previous version of this form, it said record of admission, commission, or treatment. So yes or no, that's what the form used to say, yes or no, for 2 different questions, for 2 different people. Then they added a thing, this one is phenomenal, yes or no, or expunged. So they have to check off.
It's expunged.
Well, yeah, I mean, expunged kind of means like
Expunged means
adios.
adios.
Yeah, gone, right? But no, we got a place now where we have to have expunged checked off. And on our Facebook page for NJ2AS, we had a little conversation going on about this, and somebody actually got jammed up on this because they when they filled out their other form, they said they had never been in any kind of mental health situation. And well, come to find out, his expungement, is that a word? I think it is. His records having been expunged didn't quite take. They were all right there for the viewing, and goodness gracious, this guy got jammed up. So the point is, Jersey is terrible. So, and guess what? I keep yammering to everybody that'll listen that this is a cancer, a virus that's going to spread. Look what happened in Washington State with the I-594. Is that the right number? I think it is. That just happened in the last round of elections. Now, Pennsylvania, which has typically been a free state, at least as far as we can tell, by comparison to New Jersey, they've got this young gentleman over there named Tommy Wolf. Woe unto them when it comes to Second Amendment rights. They're going to join the ranks of New Jersey, and it doesn't bode well for anybody. And let's see, where else they got? I thought I was done. Nevada now has a similar set of bills headed their way to the I-594 that passed in Washington State. Guess who's supporting all this? Mr. Bloomberg and all his bucks. He's putting a ton of money into it. They're also going to go after Arizona. So folks, like I'm not a gun nut, but it is about rights. We have to pay attention or we're going to get steamrolled. And that's all I have. Oh, I'm sorry, a question.
Cliff, you might not be able to answer this, but on that mental health part, there are a lot of young ladies that have lithium, the antidepressant type drugs, prescribed just to manage mood swings and whatnot. Would that compromise them when they go to fill out these forms? I mean, because that sounds like.
You're right, I don't know the answer, but my guess is I would not be surprised. You know, I'm a vet, and I kind of stepped aside from the PTSD counseling because I don't want that in my background. You know, I just don't, it's wrong. Joe.
Cliff, it might have been in one of your emails. What's going on with these situations where the police now are mining the obituaries and approaching widows to say, hey, your husband had a gun, it's time for you to.
That's a good one. That's happening up in Buffalo.
Okay.
Now that they've got snow, they're probably okay for a couple weeks. But if you happen to own a handgun in that vicinity, in that municipality, I guess, and you pass away, well, you might have long guns as well. What happens is immediately after the funeral, the sheriff comes to your door, the chief of police, whatever he is, and he wants the handgun. He wants to see it, and he wants to take it away because there's nobody there that is the genuine, legitimate owner. But guess what?
It's property.
Private property is a figment of our imagination, the way things are working out, right? But they're not only after the handgun, they're confiscating and collecting long arms. They don't bother to give you all the ins and outs of all of the laws. They just take whatever they can get their hands on. And if your widow is willing to hand them over, and if the kids don't care, and maybe they have a liberal bent, I'm working on my Spanish, adios guns. So it's like, we do have to pay attention.
That also goes into people that would have gun collections of antique guns they're gonna collect.
And they could be extremely valuable.
Yes.
And they just gone. But,
I can't imagine they're compensating for that, so it's a seizure of assets, right?
well, you would think, but, and that's the way our Constitution implies and reads, but no. They just grab and go.
What's our answer to that? If I don't own the gun, my husband's not there, and,
Well, it's community property.
I don't, well, no, in this state,
I mean, can I refuse? No.
well, this hasn't come here just yet, but it's only around the corner. But, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, gee, I don't know where
Goes
they
into
are.
the state?
No, because what happens in this state is if I have a firearm next to, on my bedside table, my wife can't use it to shoot somebody. She has to have her own FID card, her own purchased pistol that she owns. That they're not community property, because these are by license and permits and all that kind of stuff. Community property is not an issue here. So, now, I'm not an attorney, I'm just telling you, that part I know. That if you put a gun in the middle of the bed and say, honey, we can either one of us use it, no. If you shoot
If
an
anybody
intruder,
breaks into my house, my wife doesn't know about that law.
well, yeah, what do they say? It's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6, right?
Yes.
Right.
So,
But that applies to the use of the firearm. But it's like an automobile, if you leave it in your estate, nobody has a driver's license, you still own it and have the right to sell it. I
Well,
think the same thing
yeah, but
applies
when
to
you're
that.
faced with half a dozen policemen in body armor carrying fully auto and an MRAP vehicle out front, you might not choose to take that issue and debate it. So, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
As I mentioned, the dinner is Friday, December 19th. It's $45 per person. It's a 4-course meal. I would hope to see everybody there. On December 6th, we have Medford celebrates Dickens Night, and it's from 6 until 10 p.m. This is the first year that the West Jersey Tea Party is going to sponsor a table. We're going to be handing out our RAT cards and business cards to try to get people to come to the light in order to fill up the room some more. With that, I'd like to introduce John Horvat. He is a scholar, researcher, educator, international speaker, and author. His writings have appeared worldwide, including the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, the Christian Post, Washington Times, ABC News, and C-SPAN, as well as other publications and websites. For more than 2 decades, he has been researching and writing about the socio-economic crisis inside the United States that has culminated in the groundbreaking release of his new book, Return to Order, which are on sale, on the table, $20 a piece. I would strongly urge you to spend the money to get this. Recognized as one of the most important books on the subject to be published in the past 10 years, Mr. Horvat describes what went wrong in our economic model and what can now be done to put us back on course. Return to Order is destined to become one of the most hotly debated books this year. Mr. Horvat lives in Spring Grove, Pennsylvania, where he heads the Tradition, Family, and Prosperity Commission on American Studies. Return to Order, as I said, will be on sale after the presentation, and I'd like to warmly welcome John Horvat.
Thank you very much. I'm going to speak not about economics, but as you'll see, it will deal with a lot more issues than just the economic aspects of our present crisis. So let me begin. If I were to use an image to describe our present situation today, I would say our nation resembles a cruise ship. It's a very well-built, very comfortable ship. It's rendered great service to all on board. And to all outward appearances, the ship looks fine. The bars are bustling, the theaters are full, the restaurants are, everything's going well, great parties going on. People are told they don't need to worry about anything. Every aspect of your life is taken care of. At the same time, everybody realizes that the ship, there's something wrong with the ship. The standards have slipped, the captain and his crew are lax, there are financial problems, things are getting a bit cheaper. There's a storm brewing up in the horizon. And what's more, everybody knows that these ships have problems. Everybody's seen the picture of the capsized ship, and they know that sometimes it runs out of power, and there are diseases and assaults on these ships. But many prefer not to think about it. Everybody's good for one more party, one more drink, one more joke. And on board, there are a lot of people who see what's going on, the problems. They see that there's a storm brewing ahead. They warn the captain, say take measures. They themselves take measures of their own. And while we know, and we have seen just recently, that people can get on the ship, both legally and illegally, we can't get off of the ship because we're on the ship together. Even if we could slip away in a lifeboat, we don't have the navigational skills, the food, the supplies to make it to harbor. We just do what we can to prepare for the future. So I ask, isn't it true that you and I often feel like we're on this ship? Don't you sometimes feel like you're the only ones that sense the dangers while everybody else just wants to keep the party going? So the question arises, what lies at the core of this crisis on the ship? And what can be done to right the course, to put us back on track? And so to answer this question, I'd like to present some considerations from the book, Return to Order, From a Frenzied Economy to an Organic Christian Society, where we've been, how we got here, where we need to go. As I said, it's a book about culture, it's a book about economy, a book about moral values, but more important, it's a book about economy, culture, and moral values, all put together, because it's a book that I feel gets to the core of the matter and will allow us to answer our questions. And so in the course of this short talk, I would like to do three things. I would like to first discuss how we got here, where we went wrong. Secondly, where we need to go. And finally, I'd like to explain how you and I might work toward a return to order. Now, to get to the core of the problem, I'd like to use an example of another core, Common Core. I'm sure many of you here know what Common Core is. I don't have to explain it. It imposes standardized testing on students. There are a lot of reasons to be against Common Core, and I'm sure you've even had speakers here talk to you about Common Core. But the reason why I'm against Common Core is because Common Core denies the purpose of education. And the advocates of this program say that this program will make your children college and career ready. And they propose to do this by filling them full of information, testable information. And they mistake information with education. They turn education into a type of job placement society or agency. And that's not the primary purpose of education. I mean, don't get me wrong, education does involve information. It does involve preparing for a job. But the primary goal of education is the building of character, which prepares you for anything that comes along down the road. It involves the training of the mind, the formation of habits, the development of the imagination. The object of education should be for the search for truth, which is a search which will directly or indirectly eventually lead the person to its final end of God and our concern for our salvation. If you want your children to be career and college ready, give them character. They'll never lack jobs. I have a friend who works for personnel that deals with people who are hired and fired. And yeah, I mean, he tells me the horror stories it is just to find a person who can do a job these days. And it's usually not because of any lack of qualifications. They have plenty of qualifications, but they have no character. They're on drugs, they're on alcohol, they don't come in time, they're quarrelsome. They may have a college degree, but they're not career ready. You really can't do too much with them. And so Common Core frustrates the purpose of education by taking out the very few things that are left in public education that point to the people and that build character. The literary texts are replaced by informational texts. The Common Core takes away the classics, what's left of the classics. They put them to a minimum. They don't concentrate on the spiritual side of man, where character is built and where things are pointing in the direction of God and salvation. I mean, I personally believe that when modern education took God out of education, it left behind a hollow core. And now modern educators want to take away even the road signs that point in that direction. Mark Twain once described himself as a person who never let school get in the way of his education. And I think if you were to summarize the case against Common Core, I would say it's a massive program that gets in the way of education. What's wrong with the Common Core is that it's a hollow core. It's education without a soul. And when things start working against their purpose, they lose their soul. The Common Core is one of many programs we get criticized in the same way. Take, for example, Obamacare. I mean, do you realize that doctors are now going to expect you to use 155,000 codes to say what ails you and will be fined if they don't get it right? I mean, there are codes from having which stand for the toxic effect of contact with jellyfish, of being sucked into a jet engine, of being colliding with a streetcar, of being bitten, struck, or crushed by a crocodile, or by being burned when water skiing. I mean, this is the kind of system like Common Core. It's set up like a big machine that deviates from the true purpose of health, of medicine, which is the healing of the body and the soul, and not the fixing of the body as if it was a type of machine. It destroys the human relationships between the doctor and the patient, and it sets up a complex system of regulation that turns the doctor into a technician. I mean, what is Obamacare but medicine without a soul? Big government, we like to speak against big government and bureaucracy. We deplore these federal programs that turn us into numbers in a database. Gone is that personal touch that should be a part of true governing. We hate big government not only because it's big, but because it's also governing without a soul. And there are so many soulless things that are part of our lives. Some people call fast food without soul, or Facebook relationship as friendship without soul. Even the most soulful activities are not exempt. Certain types of feel-good, fuzzy worship could be called worship without soul. That is to say, we find a common denominator in many of the problems we face today, and that we sense the same lack of soul that makes modern life so superficial, artificial. And so I think our problem is a profoundly spiritual problem. It's not just Common Core, Obamacare, or the Fed. It's not just general godlessness, immorality. These are all symptoms of an agitation deep inside the soul of modern men. We are in the present state not only because these symptoms have entered into our lives, but above all because the moral values have been taken out. The core has been taken out. And when there is no moral core, things fall apart. You don't need big government or rabid liberals to destroy our moral values or our Christian roots. We actually help them do it. And when there is no core, we ourselves open the door that allows a hostile culture to come in and charge in, undermining morality and economy. We ourselves initiate the process where we start losing our freedoms, where the economy becomes unraveled and faith is destroyed in people. All this happens when there is no core and things become soulless. And so my thesis in the book is that the root cause of what is happening today is something that I trace to a social economic cause. It's a term that's coined in the book that's called frenetic intemperance. Frenetic intemperance is a reckless spirit inside certain sectors of the economy and culture that leads us to throw off the restraints and gratify all passions. It creates an economy and society that is frenzied and out of balance. What is at the core of the problem is a culture that teaches people, that leads people to resent the very idea of restraint, and scorn the spiritual, religious, cultural, and social values that normally serve to calm and temper economy and culture. To use the metaphor of our cruise ship, frenetic intemperance is a captain who throws the caution to the wind and just holds a big party on deck, regardless of what's going to happen. I mean, you can see this frenetic intemperance in markets, in newfangled investment advices, frenzied markets, derivatives that are all over the world of finance. You saw it very much in the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. It's this irrational factor that enters into economy and puts it out of balance. But where you and I see this frenetic intemperance the most is in our daily lives, in our frenzied lifestyles, the rushed and hectic schedules where instant gratification is the order of the day, where you have to have everything now, instantly, regardless of the consequences. It has to be the latest and the greatest, the biggest and the best, 5.0, 6.0, 7.0. I've been told that they have car loans right here in New Jersey with terms of 72 or 84, even 96 months. I mean, forget Black Friday holidays. Think Black September and October. Retailers already were starting to offer the special deals in September and October to get the jump on the others. And some shoppers were camping out 22 days before Thanksgiving today's in front of Best Buy somewhere, probably in California, so that they can get the best buys. Consumers are encouraged to spend beyond their means with the click of a mouse or the swipe of a card. And when all those things go wrong, then everybody looks to big government to act as a nanny of last resort to bail us out of our problems. And the government makes things worse by putting things in like stimulus programs and Common Core and Obamacare as solutions, and everybody hopes the problem will go away. To use a comparison, we could say that the free market economy is like a very robust body that produces. Our economy is excellent. We produce more than anyone else in the world. We're the biggest and the best. But there is a drug called frenetic intemperance that enters into the veins of this healthy body and wreaks havoc upon its systems. It may even make the system work better and faster and like steroids, but at a certain point, the system crashes. And for a long time, we've managed to survive these crashes. But now the problem is taking on monstrous proportions. Our problem is that this drug of frenetic intemperance is undermining and now dominating our economy. It's setting the tone. It's tearing our economy and society apart. It's eroding our faith. We've turned parts of our economy into a party economy that never seems to stop. We've built up a credit card nation with ever-increasing spending limits and monthly payments. And so in return to order, I make my case that the present party culture is unsustainable. The ship is heading for disaster. And for those who wish to see, we're heading into a storm. And our problem is we need to declare the party's over before it's too late. And so that leads me to the second part of this talk. What is the response? What are the solutions? Everybody asks those questions. The solutions is, if the problem is things are without soul or without a core, we need to bring back the core, the Christian core, not the common core, but the Christian core. And to do that, the first step is to know where we want to go. I mean, too many times we know where we don't want to go. We don't want socialism. We don't want Obamacare. We don't want common core. We don't want deficit spending. We don't want illegal immigration. But that's why you and I are here. But sometimes it's unclear where we do want to go. And if we were in a position to change things, we really would not have a positive program to offer. The questions we need to be asking now is, what kind of society do we need and want when the party stops? What course are we to chart after straying off so far? And the book Return to Order attempts to answer this very important question. It affirms that what is being destroyed in society today is a framework of orienting principles, which is called order. Russell Kirk said it best. He said, order is the first need of the soul. Without order, you can't be free. Freedom, justice, law, virtue, they're all extremely important, but order is the first and most basic need. I mean, we value our freedom, but what is freedom without order? The left does everything in the name of an unbridled freedom. But our country was not founded, was conceived with the idea of ordered liberty, not unbridled freedom. When you have this framework of order, the influences of important institutions like family, community, and faith can naturally serve to temper economy, to break the intemperance of our days, and facilitate the practice of virtue. When there is order, those permanent things such as norms of courage, of duty, of honor, of charity, of justice, these things flourish. And so the answer to our question is simple. We want to go back to a framework of order. And so we need an order. But not just any order. There are all sorts of people out there proposing their own types of orders. Socialist orders, ecological orders, New Age orders, you name it. They're out there. They promise to put things in order, but they really will pretty much deliver tyranny. That's why we need to return to order. We don't have to invent an order. It already exists. It's nothing new. It's a social order that comes from our very human nature itself, valid for all times and all peoples. It's a social order that is not imposed. It cannot be regulated, stimulated, or legislated into existence. It relies upon those natural regulating institutions inside society that always emerge when men reunite together in search of the common good. It's based on the orienting principles of natural law, the Ten Commandments, and rooted in the social institutions of family, community, and faith. And although it applies to everyone, the church is its best and most secure guardian. And so our proposal is simple and straightforward. The best expression of this order is found in what I call organic Christian society, the same order that gave rise to the West. Because this organic order is a return to our distant roots. It's where we came from. It's a society that historically existed. And it involves not returning to an historic past to turn back the clock, but rather to return to a core of ordering principles that brought us so many of the institutions that are now fading, like the rule of law, representative government, traditional family, and subsidiarity. I call it an organic society because it's modeled after the family with living relationships, and not the cold bureaucratic model, machine-like model of the socialist type. Organic society brings with it notions of honor, of leadership, of authenticity, craftsmanship, of profession. It's full of vitality and nuance. It's the core that puts the soul back into society. And it is a Christian order because what we want is also a Christian society, because when an organic order is Christian, it multiplies the possibilities of our action because it includes God and His grace in partnership. The Christian ideal brings with it notions of charity and justice and dignity that don't exist in other civilizations. It makes it easier to practice the virtues, especially the cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, and lays the foundation for progress, true freedom, and prosperity, not only for Christians, but also for non-Christians. So we desperately need a return to order and a regeneration of this kind of order to go back to the core, because that's where we need to go, because there is no other place to go save disorder. And that brings me to the final point. Once you know what direction you want to go, how do you return to order? That's the question everybody asks. How do you go back to order? At the present time, we can assume our roles, as indeed you are doing right now, of being concerned passengers on this cruise ship, navigating in troubled waters. We can do our part to declare the parties over by not getting involved in this intemperate spending, or voting in our elections, or praying for our nations. We can do everything possible to diminish the party's disastrous effects upon society and bring sanity back to our nation. However, more importantly, we need to be prepared for when the party stops and think beyond the short term. Then we can be ready with our propose a return to the orienting core of principles that makes for good navigation. We need to be in a position to present a valid alternative that has a proven record that needs to be put on the table and back on the ship's charts. However, I should warn you, and I'm sure you already know, that this involves a grueling war against a culture of death, of entitlement, and instant gratification. There are no instant solutions in this cultural war. There's no app you can download. Rather, there's just the blood, sweat, and tears that are the characteristics of any conflict. But there are definitely things you can do now, right now, to hasten and work toward a return to order. And I'd like to suggest 4 things that are based on the book, Return to Order. The first thing you can do is keep doing what you're doing. Usually in these lists, that people are told they must change the world, they have to do all sorts of spectacular things that they're not doing and probably will never be able to do. And I think it makes sense to start by encouraging you to keep on doing what you're doing. Whether it be a speaker or an activist, a protester, an emailer, someone who prays for the nation, a voter, whatever, keep it up. I mean, you and I are here today because we must be doing something right. Let's keep doing what we're doing. It's probably what we do best, and not give up and look for things we can't do. If you're not involved in anything or not doing something, then think of things that you are able to do and are passionate about. There's certainly a lot of causes out there. Pick one and do what you need to do. Keep doing what you're doing also means resisting the temptation to isolate yourself, to flee to some isolated part of the country and just go at it alone, right off the rest of the world. But this crisis is so generalized that nobody can escape. I mean, have no illusion. It will reach you some way, whether it be by government action, by media, or by iPhone. We must continue to engage in the fight. Doing what you're doing means also being concerned about the future of our great nation. We see what's happening to our nation and want to do something about it. Keep having this concern for our nation. I received an email from a person who obtained the book, Return to Order, and he sent a copy to one of his friends because he said this friend was someone who grieved for the nation. I thought this was a beautiful expression because it describes exactly those for whom Return to Order was written. It's for all those who grieve for the nation. And so I say, continue grieving for the nation because that is what motivates us to do what we're doing. The second thing you can do is do what you do better. Do what you do better. We need to see if we can understand the problem better, go deeper into the problem, see how we got here, where we need to go. Look for the highest causes of things, which is actually the definition of wisdom, and put confidence in God. Do what you do smarter. Learn how to express yourself better. We need to be constantly gaining new knowledge and being ever vigilant, being adapted to the circumstances, never being satisfied. I think one of the examples of doing what you do better is actually the effort to defeat Common Core. I mean, by constantly watching grassroots organizers have mobilized in enormous efforts that's changing the course of the battle over American education. These grassroots people have become informed about this program and are causing an enormous amount of problems for those who wish to put Common Core in power. I was asked by someone recently to write an article about education because they said, well, I think last week was National Education Week or something like that. And there was a huge educational conference in Washington, and the topic of the conversation is, how do we deal with Common Core? These educators were just being hit on all sides by Common Core. They're just trying to figure out a way to deal with it because the activists have made their life miserable. The third thing we can do is to seek out others who do what you do. I mean, you're not alone. We need to look for others of like mind. We all belong to intermediary bodies, of associations, of communities. Each one of us can influence our communities. Associations and intermediary bodies are the best line of defense against big government, a hostile culture, and an intemperate economy. No one can endure a me against the world fight. We all must unite with others to do what we do, and especially those who desire a return to order. The first intermediary bodies, of course, is the family. The best measure you can take is to get your family life in order and to defend the family in the public square whenever necessary. And the same can be said of other associations and communities and parishes, close-knit associations like parishes, pro-life organizations, the Tea Party groups, and others who form a kind of community life of their own. This also especially applies to the church, since religion is a very powerful force for any return to order. Getting together with those who do what you do inside the church is an important part of this fight, not only because it's important that you get together with others, but because the church puts at our disposal the mighty power of grace and prayer through which all things can be accomplished. To think that you can weather the storm without the help of those who do what you do, and without God's help, is to deprive ourselves of one of our most powerful assets. Finally, the fourth thing you can do is to stand out in what you do. I saved leadership for the last because it is a very key ingredient. We need to be what some sociologists call representative characters. That is, people who step up to the plate, people who you can look up to, who can translate the needs of others and put them to action, people who can set the tone and unify. The problem is that real leadership is hard. A leader is not someone who says, here I am, follow me, do what I say. A leader is someone who earns the respect of those around him. People want to follow him because he takes upon himself the welfare of the others. It's full of suffering and responsibilities. It's much easier to go with the flow of things. It's much easier just to look after your own interests. There's a prevailing, I don't want to be a hero mentality out there that is very destructive. And what makes matters worse is that modern culture discourages the idea of representative characters and proposes false and unrepresentative characters in our movie stars and jet set characters. We have to do the opposite. Everyone here can be someone who people look up to. Everyone here can be a hero to someone, even if it's just your own family. You don't need to win a Medal of Honor. All you have to do is make an effort. And we don't want just one single charismatic leader. That doesn't work. It often ends in disaster. What we need is to regenerate a culture of heroes on all levels of society. And so we should think of concrete ways in which we can truly be representative figures to those who look up to us, whether it be in the family, or business, parish, or community. There's an interesting thing about leadership is that most things take a long time to develop, even generations. I've heard so many people say, we're not going to turn this around in our generation. But with good leaders and heroes, it's different. It doesn't take a huge number or a long time. When they enter into the scene, and the sociologists say this, the leaders have a capacity of turning things around rather quickly. I'm sure you've all heard of cases of businessmen who've taken over business and turned it around, or a priest who enters a parish and turns it around, or even a sports coach who takes an underdog team and turns it into a state champion. That's why it's important that we generate a culture of heroes, because a return to order is not going to happen all by itself. People have to get involved. We need a culture of heroes to get things done, and get them done quickly, or they won't be done. Well, these are a few of the ideas that I took from the book, Return to Order. I always tell people in what they say, you always have to have a 30-second elevator speech, so that when you go into the elevator and someone asks, what's your book about? You have it right there, 30 seconds, and you tell them what's about. And my speech is pretty much this. Return to Order is written for those who grieve for the nation and desire return to order, honor, and all those things that really matter. I think that's 30 seconds. If not, it's somewhere around there. Well, the book goes much more into depth of where and why we went wrong. Of course, it explains much more and will make you see more clearly where we need to go. But I would say it is a book that is written to help you do what you do it better, unite with others who do what you do, and stand out by providing leadership in times of moral cowardice. What I had in my mind in writing this book was to make it a book you could keep with you and come back for inspiration. It's something you can relate to when you're feeling discouraged by the frenetic intemperance of our party economy, on board, or overwhelmed by big government and being just a number in the system. It's a book that's not written for economists. I'm not an economist. It's written in layman's terms. It tells a story. It gives you elements and tactics you can use to change your own lives and change America. If I could leave you with a final thought, it would be this. Return to order is not only necessary, but possible. Return to order is possible because our ideas are very powerful and attractive. What you have to remember is that the conservative position is by its nature constructive, and the leftist agenda by its nature is destructive because it undermines morality and authority. And because the left tends to destroy the structures that keep society together, as time goes on and the breakdown worsens, the left is naturally destroying the structures of its own organization and thought. You need only look at the Occupy Wall Street movement. It was so anarchical they couldn't get their act together. It just literally disintegrated. We have a student outreach program. It's called TFP Student Action. In fact, Joseph is a member of TFP Student Action. And we go out to university campuses and even Ivy League campuses. And when we go on these campuses, we don't find ideas. The opposition does not engage in rational debate. I mean, they shout and scream expletives at us, they throw things at us, spit on our flyers, try to tear down our banners. There's no rational debate because their ideas have decayed with their morals. The left doesn't have powerful ideas, it exploits some powerful emotions, but they can't be sustained over time. And so we need to consider that as things get worse and the perspective looks, our perspective looks much better than theirs, since it is seen as a force of stability and certainty. And this can be seen in all sorts of conservative reactions throughout the world. A particularly strong proof of this is the number of young people that are involved in the fight against abortion, or the fact that twice as many Americans label themselves as conservatives than liberals. I'm not saying all these people are as dedicated as we would like them to be as conservatives, but I am saying that it is an attractive label, and it wasn't that way 20 or 30 years ago. But these Christian ideas are only powerful to the extent that they are presented correctly and unapologetically. We must act upon them with firmness and energy and determination. If this is done, they can, as they have in the past, capture the imagination and move people to do great things. I maintain that the power and attraction of our Christian ideas is such that we naturally turn to them in times, because they are so perfectly suited to our nature. We naturally tend to gravitate toward order in times of chaos and disorder. This Christian order is where we naturally tend to go. And I would take it one step further. Not only do people naturally gravitate to a Christian order, but in the midst of our present chaos, some people are now gravitating toward this order. As things get worse, more and more people are soul-searching, looking for solutions that they sense once existed and might yet return. And so across the nation, you find examples of this. People looking for authenticity, things with order and honor, whether it be organic food or Gregorian chant or a desire for craftsmanship, traditional families, homeschooling, microbreweries. There's a groundswell. I'm not saying that they are a majority. But history is never decided by majorities. It's decided by impassioned minorities who exercise great influence over the majority. And there are sizable minorities out there with great passion and courage who dare to defy the culture and say enough. And we need to be out there to reach out to these people who are searching and become beacons and guide and reassure them in their convictions. To close, I'd like to tell us a little story. Again, it involves our student outreach called TFP Student Action. And we've often been involved in the same-sex marriage debate. And we go to some of the most liberal places and campaign on this issue in the streets. We are often attacked because of this. But surprisingly, we are more often supported. Once we went to the Bronx on a busy highway and a lot of young people there with a sign saying honk for traditional marriage. And we were greeted with all sorts of manifestations of support. People are honking their horns, putting their thumbs up, just shouting and saying, wow, this is great. One man saw us and he parked his car and came up to us and said, I wanted to see if I got this right. You're for traditional marriage, right? I saw so many people honking, I couldn't believe it. I thought I was the only person in the Bronx against same-sex marriage. Now I see that there are thousands. And so our role now is to be beacons of order in a world of disorder. We have very powerful principles. We only need to be faithful to them. We can't dilute or adulterate them or to cater to politically correct times. Now there's one final reason I think a return to order is possible, and for me it's the most compelling reason. It is that we can count on the help of God and His grace. We have very powerful ideas, but God is much, much more than a powerful idea. He's an almighty, powerful God. His grace can touch and change the most hardened sinner. His wrath can overcome the most challenging obstacles. We live in a very materialistic society, but there is an enormous thirst for the spiritual, for God. In contrary to what a lot of people say, I believe that we Americans are a very religious people. In the promotion of the book, Return to Order, I go to bookstores, and I'm always amazed at the huge religious book section, even the most secular Barnes and Nobles. I mean, even the most liberal politicians know that a mention of God resonates among constituents. So therefore, we can rely upon God's help for this return to order. As I never tire of saying, our situation is like that of the prodigal son. If you read the story of the prodigal son, you will recall that he took his father's riches and spent them on frenetic intemperance of games and parties aboard a cruise ship of sorts. What brought about the conversion of the prodigal son was not a moral problem. It was an economic problem. He ran out of money. He had no way to live. And a big famine came over the land. And it was at this point that the prodigal son realized the error of his ways and had longings for his father's house. And as St. Luke says in the gospel, he rose up and came to the father. Now, in the story of the prodigal son, everybody knows the son longed for his father, but we forget that the father longed much more for the son. In fact, he looked from afar for news of his son and came out to meet him when he appeared on the horizon. We must be convinced that God desires our grand return home much more than we do. And when he sees the least effort on our part, he will not be outdone in his generosity, and he will favor our endeavors. It is my hope that in the midst of the crisis that threatens to come upon us, our land, the book Return to Order serves to awaken in you longings for a Father's house and compel you to rise up and challenge the culture, to get together with others and challenge the culture and come to the Father. It is my hope that you will adhere to these powerful and attractive ideas that call us to do what comes to us naturally, which is to return home. Thank you very much.
We'll now open the floor to questions for John, and we'll try to moderate the questions so we're not overwhelming or stepping on each other. First question, someone. Okay, Greg.
Might be impertinent, but I noticed you're wearing a pin. I wonder what that represents.
It's the pin of our organization. I'm from the American Society for the Defense of Tradition, Family, Property. We're a civic organization, Catholic inspiration. And we defend tradition, family, property through books and publications, through educational initiatives, campus activism, and we have a sort of a think tank where we develop topics of this sort, and that's why I was able to dedicate time to write the book Return to Order. So this is a symbol. It's a lion. It symbolizes a willingness to fight for ideals, a lion, and a noble in a noble way. And it is a very attractive symbol, so we use it.
Very good.
Okay, Jean.
Yes.
I just want to say, you are a good example of following all 4 steps, starting with doing what you do and go on and do it better.
Absolutely, yeah.
But my big thing is great to have someone that teaches or writes about return soul, the soul of America. And I was trying to think of the quote by Jefferson that a democracy or republic cannot survive without moral people. You know, people that have a soul. So my big thing has always been that we have a sleeping giant in this nation, the church.
Right.
And that if the church would preach more, you know, concerning the values and the honor and the integrity of the Bible laws, and that elections wouldn't even be a problem.
That's true. Absolutely.
So that's my.
There is a crisis in society, and there is a crisis inside churches all over the world.
Yes.
All the churches in the United States, and it is a tragedy because this is the area where we would be the most effective. It would be just a matter of speaking out, but this idea we have to be politically correct, we have to be tolerant, we have to be this, we have to be that, charitable, you know, all these little buzzwords that are out there that prevent the churches from being involved, but they definitely need to be involved, and we would be 100 times more effective.
We could challenge all our pastors and priests to, you know, be more adamant.
Absolutely, and and you do have those who do that, and
I know.
it's amazing what they're able to accomplish when they do these things. It's just it multiplies our effects. But when you don't have them, we have to step up to the plate, and a lot of times it is the layman that is stepping up to the plate all over the country.
That was good. Enjoyed it.
I came in late, so
Yes.
we already spoke about this, but what kind of research did you do?
I'm not an economist by training. I don't even have a college degree. If you want to go that far, I started studying these issues about in 1986. I was invited to join a study commission of various Americans, looking into problems of economy, of culture, of moral values, and putting them all together. And so over the last 30 years, I've sort of got an education of sorts. I didn't let university get in the way of my education. I just went and did what I had to do. And I did a lot of research, hundreds of books involved. And so, and I submitted the book to a lot of scholars and professors and just experts who were able to guide me and keep me on the right path to make sure I wasn't saying things that were not didn't really work out. So I feel that the research and the efforts all came together in the book that came out.
You're also speaking of stuff we've all seen from the family. I'm 49, so I grew up when I was a kid in the 70s. The thing is, the products weren't available to buy. So everybody kind of lived within their means. Everyone had one car. You know, everyone had two parents. We all went to church. I grew up in Philly. It was
Right.
a much better environment if we didn't have money, but we didn't need to have money. Everybody had the family values and everything. But again, if you wanted something for Barbie, you had to make it.
Right.
But now, the stuff that in my head, I wish we could buy this. Everything I wish for is all the stores in Target.
Right. And the worst thing is a lot of people don't even have the money, and they're buying them anyway, with going into debt, putting it on their cards.
It's just commercials like the TV set.
Yeah.
People used to be paid for, commercials. Now it's all this just buy. You just program. You need a pair of sneakers to go to the bathroom. You know what I'm saying? And you're programmed by Nike.
It is. It's a spiritual problem. It's a moral problem. It's not an economic problem.
Right.
Because those desires, that idea of restraints, I have no restraints in what I do, how I buy, what I need to do, what I need. That's what fuels this.
And you need to keep up with the Joneses, though.
Yeah.
Got to keep up with your neighbor. God
Right.
forbid he's got a better car than you.
Right.
Makes you look bad.
Or a better iPhone
Exactly.
these days. Yes.
So one of the things you said was rather than where we want to go, we're looking at where we don't want to go.
Right.
So I see that it's a competitive environment in all respects. Religions are competitive because, for instance, there's a certain religion that's enjoying a lot of growth in this country and around the globe.
Right.
But what is it? So what's the message? I mean, we have to compose a message for our group, and what's the message that can bring people our direction that appeals to the emotions I'm always frustrated with this,
Mhm.
this thought, and I don't care whether it's on Second Amendment issues, which I find to be important.
Right.
Could be religion or freedom and liberty, but we don't, our message doesn't appeal to the emotions,
Mhm.
at least the way we deliver it.
Mhm. Well, I mean, as I said, the left has strong emotions but no principles. We have strong principles, and many times the emotional part isn't.
Their logic.
We need the logic, and what we also need we need to put the two together. That's the best way to address these issues, where they have an appeal to the logic of the person, but they also have an element of the good, the true, the beautiful, the things that attract people, honor. You know, a lot of these very strong principles and emotions that lead people to move the soul. You know, these are things that I think are very important. For example, in the Second Amendment rights issue, that is very important. We all know the logic of the need and the right to bear arms, how wonderful it is to bear arms. But from the emotional point of view, it might be the case to use cases of heroism that inspire people to see, you know, how Americans have acted in the past in a very beautiful and noble way to bring our country to where it is, and at the same time use the arms that are there and are our right to use. I mean, we can put together a lot of these issues with other things that are beautiful, that move the soul, and that would be the ideal way.
Of course, like the NRA publishes things like that in their magazine every month,
Mhm.
but you'll never see word one of it in the mainstream media.
Right. Well, I would give up. I mean, the mainstream media is, you know, they're the mainstream media, but it's interesting that they're fast becoming non-mainstream, because with the internet and all the other alternatives that are out there, I mean, the New York Times, what is it today? It's a shell of what it once was.
For rapid fish.
And we're certainly not, shedding tears over it, but that's pretty much the mainstream media. And a lot of these things that were so strong and were so overpowering today are not. I mean, with the internet, with a lot of these grassroots things that have come up, it makes our job a little easier than it was in the past, when you had this just establishment that was there that you just didn't seem to be able to get a foot in the door. So that was my side. Yes.
Just my comment on the mainstream media. If you look at your mainstream media channels now, they're running infomercials. They're running programs. CNN used to be the 24-hour news network. After like 10 o'clock, they're running regular shows. No one's watching their networks anymore. They're dead.
Yeah.
I had spoken to someone that said, why they still exist? Well, if you really look at it, it's part of the tax code. They're writing off their losses for other things, like Comcast owns NBC. They're writing off the losses on the programming for the cable network. So he said, in a way, if you change the tax code to like a fair tax, they're done. They're history. There's no good programming. They have no credibility. They are totally in such massive competition with all these cable channels now and all these reality shows that people are not paying attention to them. And the only one that's really reporting the news are a few channels, which is Fox Business, Glenn Beck's channel. People are watching more C-SPAN than ever before, I know, to find out what's going on politically in the country. So NBC, CBS, ABC, they're history. They're dead.
Yeah, it is very much that. I mean, I've seen this, just over the last couple of years. We are the breakdown of the system, that they themselves have helped break down is really worked to their disadvantage and to our advantage, because it opens doors, it opens avenues that didn't exist there before.
They created their own demise,
right?
And they don't realize that.
Yeah.
Or if they do, they won't admit it, and they're still going along with the talking points of the president right now.
Yeah.
Think it's going to change, and he's throwing them under the subway car, the train, the bulldozer, the steamroller, everything, and they still follow him.
That's very true. Very good point. Yes, sir.
You said you spent a lot of time on college campuses. I mean, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to educate our children, And other than to be able to operate an iPhone, most of them seem to be complete idiots. How do we get in this situation? How do we get out of it?
Well, I think a lot of this is the crisis itself is prompting a lot of people to take actions. I mean, the breakdown of the educational system has led people to homeschool, which has put the control back in the hands of the parents. The lack of college education has given rise to certain universities that have sprung up, that have addressed these issues. The crisis itself is causing a lot of solutions to pop up. It's not going to be instant. It's not going to be something that's will, let's say, sweep the nation in a couple years, but it is something that is a hopeful symbol. And the college case is very much that. I just saw, maybe you've seen the YouTube video of the college student down in Texas, and I think it's A&M, where someone went and asked the question, who won the Civil War, and nobody could answer the question. Who did we gain independence from? I don't know,
Yeah.
5 or 6 people. I mean, it was just amazing what they don't know.
Right.
But a lot of these concerned parents who have taken a position and put themselves back in control of their kids' education, I'm sure their children can answer those questions. Yes?
I'd like to thank you for the encouragement, because I myself have been, trying to take those next steps and find more like-minded people and do it better and become a leader, not the leader, but a leader. But so I do want to thank you for that. And also, just very quickly, do you have a position on the immigration issue?
Of course, yeah. And I mean, in this crowd, there's only really one position, and I completely sympathize. I mean, it is a crazy position that's being taken. There's actually a footnote in the book that deals with immigration, and how what the Bible says about immigration. Most people think, well, the Bible doesn't have anything about it, but there are parts in the Old Testament where they spoke about how to deal with strangers in the land, and it's amazing. The biblical position is pretty much ours, that you don't grant citizenship directly to people who come to your lands, because you're putting into their hands the direction of a country they don't know anything about. They don't have the experience to. It's not just that you give to somebody a right over something to make decisions which they don't have the elements to make. I mean, the Bible is much more severe than we would be. They say 2 or 3 generations, but nonetheless, they do say you can't just automatically give people the right to citizenship. That you should be kind to strangers, which nobody here would dispute, but you can't just let them overwhelm or not allow you to absorb. There is a healthy absorption of immigrants, but when it becomes overwhelming, it's not just to those who are.
So you're saying we should make them carriers of wood or dewars of wood?
Well, I mean, we should have a balanced position. This idea that charity says we have to let anyone who comes to our country in is not balanced. It's simply not balanced. And unfortunately, a lot of religious are taking this position. They're saying no, charity. Bible says this.
Including ours.
The Bible doesn't say it.
No.
The Bible doesn't.
Didn't the bummer, didn't he quote the Bible last night?
Yes, he did.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't masochist enough to say.
There shall not mistreat a stranger verse.
Any other questions for John? John, thank you very much. Make certain you get a chance to purchase John's book. Before you leave, buy 5 drinks.
Sure.
All right, I'll take care of that.
Five is very
Pleasure.